Hello and welcome to Around the World in 8 Minutes, a show by People's Dispatch where we bring you stories of resistance and struggle from all over the globe. In this episode, we look at the continuing protests by students in Chile, a strike by workers of the largest telecom company in Greece, and the global campaign for the release of Pakistani professor Junaid Hafiz, who has been sentenced to death for blasphemy. We begin with the students' protests in Chile, where on January 6th and 7th, high school students demonstrated across the country against the University Selection Test or the PSU. This is a standardized national entrance exam for admission to the country's universities. Student organizations such as the ACES and the CONES said that the PSU is discriminatory and deepens inequalities in the education sector. On January 6, hundreds of young students demonstrated outside several examination centers throughout the country, including the capital Santiago and the port city of Valparaiso. In some places, students blocked access to exam centers and burnt exam papers as a mark of resistance. In many cities, students were beaten up and arrested by the police. At least 81 people were arrested throughout the country. Due to the strength of the student protests, however, authorities were forced to suspend exams in 64 centers across the country. The mobilization continued on January 7th with the demand of a structural transformation of the Chilean education system to make it more representative. The PSU has been in effect in Chile since 2003. Protesters claim that the current admission system privileges those who attend better schools from affluent areas and have better resources to prepare for it. They say that it discriminates against a large majority of the students who can't afford a quality higher education. The president of the Communist Youth of Chile, Camilo Sanchez, declared his support for the student protests. Sanchez said that the exam did not measure students' abilities, but reserved some careers and universities for those with greater resources, while excluding a large majority of the poor people. The strike won the support of the teachers too. The president of the National Teachers Union, Mario Aguilar, also supported the students' protest, terming the test segregationist and classist. The strike took place even as the popular uprising in Chile will complete 3 months on January 18th. The people of Chile have been mobilizing, demanding a new constitution through the National Constituent Assembly and an end to the abusive neoliberal model enforced since the last civic military dictatorship of General Augusto Pinochet. This uprising too was sparked by a high school students' protest against the increase in the cost of public transportation services in the capital. In October 2019, high school students began refusing to buy metro tickets en masse and jumped the turnstiles to protest the hike. The resistance, led by the Chilean youth, served as a catalyst for the awakening of long-standing discontent in the country. We next go on to Greece, where workers of the telecom firm OTE are on strike, demanding uniformity in contracts and equal pay for equal work, in addition to their rights as workers.
Αλληλεγγύη στην πάλη των λαών. Ζήτω ο αγώνας των άλλων εργατών. Αλληλεγγύη στην πάλη των λαών. Ζήτω ο αγώνας των άλλων εργατών.
On January 7th, the 14th day of the strike, police arrested 5 trade unionists picketing at the OTE's headquarters in Thessaloniki on the complaint of the management. OTE is the largest technology company in Greece. The strike began in the last week of December and the management has been making continuous attempts to break the strike, but has so far been unsuccessful. The Communist Trade Union All Workers Militant Front, or PAME, condemned the arrests and said that this follows the trend of the New Democratic Party government's policy of curbing strikes and trade unionism. The party pointed out that the management has used unprecedented tactics through a multitude of media campaigns, pressure, threats and terrorism by executives and layoffs to break the strike. The union said that no matter how shameful these practices are, they will prove to be in vain against the determination of the workers. Incidentally, the same government had last year pushed a bill which sought to severely restrict the functioning of trade unions and the right to strike. Trade unions in progressive sectors across Greece also organized massive protests against this bill during September last year. In our final story, we go to Pakistan, where an international campaign is building up against the death sentence to Junaid Hafiz, a professor. Hafiz was sentenced to death on December 21st on charges of blasphemy. A United Nations expert group has called the sentence a travesty of justice and urged higher courts to overturn the decision. 33-year-old Junaid Hafiz was arrested in March 2013 for allegedly running a social media page on which derogatory and blasphemous content was being posted. He has been in solitary confinement since 2014. Ever since Junaid's arrest over 6 years ago, his family has faced a lot of trouble. Their business collapsed and they have been avoided by their family and neighbors. 2 lawyers defending the young professor were attacked by unidentified persons and at least 1 lawyer was killed. Members of the extremist group protecting the Prophet's sanctity have been accused of threatening the scholar and his father, Hafiz al-Nasr. The death sentence against Junaid comes despite a landmark Supreme Court ruling last year involving a Christian woman, Asia Bibi, who had been convicted of blasphemy. She had been acquitted. The UN experts group said that the ruling should have acted as a precedent for lower courts to dismiss any blasphemy case that has not been proved without any reasonable doubt. The group added that the death sentence on Junaid has no basis in either law or evidence and therefore contravenes international law. Journalists in Pakistan's Punjab province have reported on how local and intermediate courts often pass death sentences in blasphemy cases despite weak or even non-existent evidence due to social pressure. Some of these verdicts are overturned, but after years, during which the accused and their families suffer huge social and psychological trauma. Since 1990, more than 70 people have been killed in Pakistan in cases related to blasphemy. 17 people convicted of blasphemy remain on the death row in the country. And finally, here is a look at protests against Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms in France, which have entered their 6th week. That's all we have for this episode of Around the World in 8 Minutes. To know more about these struggles, visit our website peoplesdispatch.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for watching.
Cantar que vamos a triunfar, avanza ya.